As Casey walked into the library, he was surprised by all their rows of books. The shelves seemed to go on forever. Half of them were lit by golden sunlight falling down through large skylights in the ceiling, each pane looking out into a beautiful blue and partly cloudy sky. That gave Casey a warm sensation. He wondered to himself why he hadn't visited sooner. He turned his head towards the windows that ran the full length of the back wall. They were large, two-story windows encased with wrought iron patterns, and arched at the top. Just outside, ivy mixed with climbing red flowers, perhaps roses, covered a foot inside their edges. The artificial sunlight fell through like an evening sun. Patches of light lay 20 feet across the floor, where the first row of shelves didn't block it. The floors were made of long wood planks. Large rustic tables were everywhere, with several of them covered with more books. Every constructor compartment on the wheel, including the library, contained similar windows that displayed artificial light and backdrops. Those backdrops might be forests, mountains, lakes, etc. Any window could display different scenes at different times. They were the main reason most people never went up top. They had all they needed down below, and the library was an exceptional example of the technology the builders incorporated to make the trip more comfortable. An older man stepped out from behind a table and said, "Hello, student. What's your name?" "Casey Hill, sir." "Welcome to the library. My name is Hubert Longfellow. I assume you are here for your first class, orientation." "Yes, I am." "Good. You're an hour early. Regardless, it will take place on the second floor through that green door." Hubert pointed to the door, that one. "Thank you. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do." "Son, your first class will cover that, and soon afterward, you'll figure it out. Just remember, there are no specific rules here, other than study. Sorry for being redundant, but your instructor will explain all of that." "It was nice to meet you, Casey. As you can see, I'm involved with that stack of books behind me, so I need to get back. Again, welcome." The first class lasted for an hour. There were 11 other young blue-eyed teenagers, like himself. The instructor explained the older blue-eyed residents were there to help with their education. So, please ask questions. Finally, he said the first thing each student needed to do was select a research project, and that would begin their training. He told them they would figure out how it all worked, and more often than not, research projects would present themselves. It was now the students' responsibility to learn everything pertaining to history, the survival of everyone on board, and the success of the wheel to reach its new home. The instructor, Basil Pascal, asked, "Are there any questions?" Casey's friend Jesse asked, "Why are we only now beginning our studies here at the library? Why haven't we been coming here since we were children and first started our education?" "That's a good question, student. It was important for your future and the future of travelers on board this ship that you know them and are known by them. We are them. If we started bringing you here as children and separated you from the rest of the population, you would never understand them nor attach yourself to the other citizens. None of us ancients are in any way superior to anyone else on this Arkansas. I can say most of my friends are not ancients, and because I grew up with them, I will always have their interests in mind when I make important decisions. Did you understand that, Mr. Monroe? Did the rest of you understand what I just said?" Everyone understood. At the end of class, Elder Pascal assigned each student an apartment that was attached to the library itself, and as he handed out a map showing the assigned locations, he said, "We provide apartments to keep you on site so your studies won't be limited by traveling to and from the library, although you can choose to live any place you desire. That is up to you, but I would suggest you stay here at least half the time until it is no longer feasible." Jesse asked, "When does it become no longer feasible?" "You have a lot of questions, young man. You're going to do well. It takes about 10 years to reach that level where projects and their research processes will not take up all of your time. Some get there quite fast, others not so fast. It is up to the individual, but you can move out any time you wish." Others had questions about living at the library, but Casey didn't hear any of it. his thoughts were elsewhere and they made him quite nervous by the time the questions ended. There was a girl in class who demanded his attention. That has never happened before. She was tall with coal black hair, and the way her blue eyes illuminated next to her dark skin was hypnotizing. He almost asked her name, but turned away just before he made that mistake, and then he hurried out the door. He thought, not today. As he read the map and made it whiter his new home, he mused over his friends and how they acted like idiots around certain girls. No way would he give in to such foolishness. There was too much he wanted to do to get involved in a relationship. Besides, she didn't even notice him, which he considered a relief. Over the next 2 days, he selected as his first project the agricultural design on the surface of the Ark, and how the field engineers categorized and distributed it. He hoped it would give him a reason to spend more time on the surface. After starting his research, he found there was so much information in the library related to the subject that he spent a solitary month inside poring over books and data. On the first day of his second month at the library, he went home to visit. The first night, his sister Dan, short for Tanya, and her husband came for dinner. At dinner, he tried to explain the different responsibilities of a keeper. Currently, Casey was studying strawberry keepers. He hoped he could talk his mother into growing them in the kitchen window. They grow in the artificial light, Mom. You can grow a lot of strawberries in a small space. You would just need the right soil, and Dad would have to build a small platform for them. His father, Jonathan, said, "Listen, son. There are plenty of strawberries to go around without me having to build a platform so your mother can grow them, and I didn't design the kitchen for growing plants." "I know, Dad. I found it interesting and assumed you and Mom would too." "Is that what they're teaching you at the library?" "No. We pick our own subjects of study. My first project for the last month was about the agricultural design of the surface up top, with all the different soil compositions allowing certain crops to grow where they do. As you have probably figured out, I'm studying strawberry fields right now." Tam, who was mostly quiet during dinner, spoke up. "Hey, Casey, have you been down to Grafton Street Park recently?" "No, like I said, I've been busy with studies." "Why do you ask, and where or what's Grafton Street Park?" "That's the new name of Southland Park. You should come down sometime." "Why?" "Do you know Simone?" "Yes, she was a grade ahead of me." "Again, why?" "She found some old holographic files in the library that had fallen behind a bookshelf. She was cleaning when she found them. They're quite interesting. They contained holograms of what were called buskers." "Buskers? What are buskers?" "They were people who, back on Earth, stood along a place called Grafton Street, Dublin, Ireland, and played different instruments and sang for donations, money." "Okay, I know Ireland was a country back on Earth. What's Grafton Street in Dublin?" "Grafton Street was an old shopping centre in the city of Dublin, in Ireland." "All right. Again, what is a busker?" "These young people stood along the street and sang modern day back then, songs, and people gave them lots of money. It was like it was a profession. Well, anyway, they play the holograms in the park in the evening and everyone comes by to listen to them. They are very entertaining. Simone says many of the buskers were quite famous. I've never heard anything like it. I guess Simone's father is going to copy them and give them away. I hope to get some tomorrow night." Casey answered, "That would never work now, since we don't have any need for money." "You're missing the point. It was a big thing back then. It gave young people something to do, and the music certainly eliminates a lot of boredom. I heard the Education Council is talking about bringing music programs into the schools. I wish they had something like that when we were going to school." "You're telling me that people used to make a living playing instruments and singing? How did they do that?" "Oh, there was an organization back then, called Dublin City Today, or DCT, that promoted them, and because of that, thousands of young singer-songwriters, was what they called them, became famous and important role models for young people around the earth at the time." "Casey, they changed the name of the park because of them. So, They have already had an influence on people in our time. That sounds interesting. I might check it out when I get some time. Mrs. Hill interrupted, when you get some time. You could come home more often rather than staying gone for an entire month at a time. Your dad and I have missed you. Your sister and her family still come to visit every week. You should come at least once a week, like your sister. Casey and Tan had a stare down, until finally Casey said, I suppose. It's not that I don't want to. I have been so busy trying to learn as much as I can and as fast as I can. Besides, they give us luxury apartments attached to the library, so I have been in 2 places during the last month, in the library or in my apartment. That's it. Other than Jess, I haven't even gotten to know the other students, yet, especially since I've had my head in the books from the time I wake until I go to sleep. I haven't even been up top the whole time. That's the longest I've not done so. I guess you need to learn what you can. Just come home more often, please. Okay. Casey woke early Saturday morning so he could spend the day up top. He traveled to the same staircase he took the last time, hoping to get a glimpse of the strange animals Lucas told him about. He put his glasses on before he opened the hatch because the sun would be exceptionally bright from not coming up top for so long. They didn't help much at first, so he took a seat on the ground until his eyes could acclimate. After 30 minutes, his eyes worked well enough to move around. An hour later, he removed the glasses altogether. When he reached the spot where he met Lucas, he turned and headed straight for the forest. Once in the forest, he heard people talking or yelling at one another. He turned and headed in their direction. About 10 minutes later, he came upon 2 young people his age. He couldn't tell who they were until he got closer, and one of them was the young woman he saw in class. He asked, Hey. What are you guys doing here? The young woman answered, We're looking for some strange animals we saw a couple of months back. We're hoping to find them. Our father is a keeper and owns the cattle keep just the other side of the forest. So, what are you doing here? I come to the top all the time, exploring. Is your father's name Lucas? Yes. How did you know? That means your name is Corina. Yes, and this is my brother, Handel. I met your father a couple of months ago, and he told me your names, and that you were in the forest hunting for strange animals. Did you find them? No. We searched for 3 days without success. Isn't your name Casey? Yes, Casey Hill. I see you all the time in the library, with your head buried in the books. Several times, I thought about coming and talking to you, but you seemed so involved, I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry. Isn't that what we're there for? I'm trying to learn, but I'm not antisocial, honest. Well, now we know each other. We can meet and perhaps study together. Handel interrupted, Are you two going to make out now? Shut up, Handel. You shut up. Let's go. Casey asked where they were going as he mentally measured Handel, who was just as tall as he was, but a gangly, skinny country boy. Handel answered, We're going over to the cliffs. That was the last place we saw sign of those animals. Wow. I came into the forest to see if I could find them. Do you mind if I join you? Corina answered, Please do. It will be nice to have another set of blue eyes. Although Casey's opinion of Handel was of a skinny country boy, Handel could run like the wind, as could Corina. Casey had a hard time keeping pace. 20 minutes later, the 3 reached the river. On the other side were cliffs rising 40 feet straight up from the ground. Corina said, Are you okay, Casey? Do we need to slow down? We can go slower if you like, because we need to swim across the river. Do you need a rest before we do? I'm fine, thanks for asking. Well, do you mind getting wet? I love getting wet. I come up and swim in the lakes with my friends all the time, but they don't like to come up top anymore since they fell in love. They all laughed. As they walked along the base of the cliffs, Handel said, These cliffs are an unusual shape. They're constructed like a building, square and box-shaped. Look, strange symbols were scratched into the rock. Have you seen these symbols before, Casey. He pointed to the symbols as they approached them. Casey came close and said he had never seen such symbols. As he was inspecting them, he noticed a straight cut to the side of one. He pointed it out. Handel reached into his pocket and pulled out a pocket knife. He took the knife and scratched out the cut. Each symbol was set apart from the other by thin grooves. Each one was small and square, like a button. Handel pushed on one, and it slid in and back out. Corina said, "This is a door, and those symbols are a combination lock." Handel answered, "You're right." He moved over and with his pocket knife, removed all the dirt in the grooves outlining the door. Casey said, "There are 7 symbols. I'm not sure, but it seems like a lot of combinations to go through before we can open the door. I wonder why it's here." No one could provide a good reason for the door being there. It didn't matter because, without the combination, they couldn't open it, anyway. Corina said, "The combination must be around here. As long as I can remember, I have never heard of secret areas or secret rooms on board the wheel. I suspect the answer should be somewhere close by." With that, she dove into the water. The water was about 10 feet deep in front of the cliffs. She swam to the bottom, looking for anything containing the combination. While underwater, Corina discovered, against the cliff, 7 similar symbols displayed in a different combination. "Once back at the surface," she said, "I found them. They're carved into the wall below the water. I will dive to the symbols and give them to you in the order in which you should push them." She read them off one by one, and Handel pushed them as she gave them to him. That didn't work. They sat down next to the door. Corina said, "I thought that would work. Otherwise, why would there be 2 sets of symbols?" Then, Casey remembered, Handel pushed a symbol when we first found them. That means we used the wrong combination. He was right, and they went through the process twice again. The second time, the door slid open with a hissing sound. The door opened to a narrow hallway. At the back of the hall was another door. The 3 entered and the door closed behind them. When it closed, they noticed light coming from a small hole, just to the left of the first door. They didn't see it from the outside, but they could see the dim light from inside. Handel said, "No wonder we couldn't find those animals. They must have run in here through that hole." Corina said, "Yeah, I bet they did. I don't know if I like this. It's too dark in here and they could be hiding in the shadows. Who knows what they might do, especially if they're hungry." 2 seconds later, a line of small lights in the ceiling came on. There were no strange animals in the corridor, but there was a platform right in front of the door at the back. They walked to and stood on the platform. Once they did, the room filled with a soft buzzing sound, and their feet became stuck to the floor. Corina said, "I can't move my feet, can you?" Handel answered, "No, I can't." Casey could not move his either. The platform leaned to the right 90 degrees. Handel screamed when it moved. Corina commented, "You big chicken. What's the matter with you?" She looked at Casey as if to apologize for her brother. "Shut up, Corina. I didn't expect that." "Well, none of us did, but you didn't hear us screaming like a little piglet, did you? Sometimes, I wish you were my brother, instead of sister. I'd show you a thing or two." "What? How to cluck like a chicken?" Before either could complain any longer, the door in front of them opened to another dark hallway. They went through and found themselves in total darkness, again. Handel mentioned the darkness, and as soon as he did, more lights came on. They were in a long narrow hallway with other halls leading there left and right, full of bookshelves. Books were lining both walls as far as the eye could see, in both directions. Handel ran down the hall until he was out of sight, and then came back to report. "This hall seems to go on forever. There are doors about every 500 feet. Another door at the end of the hall, in front of them, slid opened, but before they went through, Handel shouted, 'Look at these books. What does World Encyclopedia mean?' That distracted Casey and Corina from going through the hatch. Instead, they joined Handel, who was pulling books from the shelves and opening them. Casey opened one and said, "These are not the same books we had in school." Corina answered, "Yes, I can see that." Handel said, "These books on this shelf are called encyclopedias. They're all lettered from A to Z." Corina found several below those labeled The Natural World. Corina opened one and said, "Wow! Look at these creatures. I have never seen or heard of most of them." She laughed and said, "Look, a monkey." They all laughed at it. They found 4 sets of world encyclopedias, 9 books about the natural world, and 3 large books labeled History of the Earth. On one shelf sat a large container full of electronic keys. Anyway, they looked like keys, each one with a number at the top. Corina said, "We should take some of these books to the ancients. Look, they go on forever. I've never seen or heard of these books before. Maybe they're the same books we read about in grade school, you know, those books destroyed in the fire a long time ago." Casey said, "There are several copies on this first shelf. We should take one copy for the other ancients and keep one for ourselves. We could use them in our next project." "I agree. Then, we can be study mates." Handel interrupted, "You're not going to start making out now, are you?" "Shut up, Handel. You're only mad because you don't have a girlfriend. I know lots of girls, any one of which would be happy to be my girlfriend, including Bailey, your best friend. She's always following me around at school." "I don't think so, dead clod. Bailey would never be interested in you." "Little do you know, Corina. Little do you know." She turned and smiled a big flirtatious smile at Casey. He awkwardly stared down the hall. They spent the next 3 hours reading the books, spending the 3rd hour reading the one book called The History of Earth. They knew the name of the planet they were from but did not understand how diverse and big it was. What was an ocean? What was an antelope, a baboon, or Africa? The information was overwhelming. Casey said, "We need to get this book out to the schools. I know there's a printing press in Zone 17 that could reprint these books." Corina said, "Remember in our first class? Mr. Pascal said, as ancients, we're responsible for reminding the citizens about things that should never be lost. I assume we lost this information a long time ago, and our first act should be to give it back to society." "Right, but we should probably start with the ancients." They forgot about the other hatch, or where it led, as they were too excited about the books they found to do any further investigating. It took them an hour to get 2 copies of each set of books out and across the river. Once they had everything on the other side, Handel ran to the barn to fetch a cart to haul them to the library. They agreed not to tell anyone where they found them and would say they found them in a chest in the forest. As they were traveling back through the forest, Casey said, "I'm certain there's more to this than what meets our blue eyes. I wonder what those keys are for? I would assume they lead to more compartments like the hole full of books." Again, they agreed but didn't spend too much time considering the implications. They wanted to get the books they had to the ancients and then out into the public schools. Casey thought how wonderful it was to be an ancient. If he could always perform this kind of service to society, he would be the happiest man on board the wheel.